From time to time, you should test your website load time using an online tool of your preference. Now, there's no shortage of speed testing tools to choose from either. A quick Google search reveals over 200 million results for the phrase website speed test, so there's no excuse for you not to do it. Now, for me, I use one of a couple of tools, and both are free, as is most of the tools you're going to find online. The one I prefer is from Google themselves, and it's their page speed tool. You can take a quick look at that right here, and it's called Page Speed Tools. You can find it at developers.google.com/speed/pagespeed. Now, there's a whole bunch of goodies on here you can play with, but the main thing would be going to analyze your site online, put in the URL of the page you want to test right here, click on Analyze, and bing, bang, boom, it's done. Another tool is from Yahoo developers, and it's called YSlow, and it's an add-on that you can put on to, I believe, just about every browser except Internet Explorer. They've got an add-on for Chrome, that's this little guy right up here. They've got another add-on for Firefox, and there's also one for Safari and Opera. But if you do not want to go through the hassle or potential browser slowdown of adding additional extensions or add-ons or plugins to your browser, then what you can do is go to a site called GTmetrix, and that's at gtmetrix.com. And pretty much the same thing. You put in the URL of the page you want to test here, and then it will go ahead and give you the speed results from both Google PageSpeed and the YSlow application. So you get the best of both worlds all at one place. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's go on back to my test site here. Let's grab that URL. Come on back here to gtmetrix.com and paste that in there, and then click on Go. It'll go through and analyze the site. And depending upon how big your site is, will depend on how long this will take. Usually not very long, even at the biggest sites. And here we are. Gives you the summary of the page speed grade and the summary of the YSlow grade. And in both cases, I'm getting an A. Now, this should not be looked at as a typical grade. It should be one that you should strive for. But I want to tell you, though, that the site that I tested is a dummy site. There's really not a whole lot of content on there, and it's on a pretty darn good server as well. And just taking a quick look down the line here, it gives you a breakdown of the various elements that are tested and the scores that were presented for that particular element with page speed, YSlow, and you get the timeline and history. Now, with both the page speed and YSlow breakdown, if you click on each one of these links here, it'll give you a little bit more information regarding the areas that need improvement. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on website speed test tools. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video will show you how to improve the performance of your website by adding expires headers to your htaccess file. Well, I say htaccess, I actually mean .htaccess to be technical. Now, what the heck is an expires headers? Well, when set up properly, expires headers tells your browser whether an item like an image or a CSS file or an audio or video file can be stored in the browser for future access, or if the browser has to go all the way back to the server or the source to get that item. For example, whenever you set up an expires header for one of these items like the CSS file, then when the visitor returns to the site, because they're not going to experience the benefit of this the first time they visit your site, only the second visit on. But whenever they do return to the site, that particular CSS file, along with all the other items that have the expires header set for, will load a ton faster because they are already stored in the visitor's browser, and the visitor's browser does not have to go all the way back to the server to get those items. So not only does your visitor experience a much faster load time on your site, but you're saving a ton in bandwidth as well. Now, for this speed tip to work, you do need to be on an Apache server, which most are these days, so that's not that big of a deal. Also, if after adding your expires headers code snippet, the tests are not showing the expires headers feature being active, then contact your host and ask if they have the expires header module activated, and while you got them on the line or chat or whatever, ask them what code snippet do they suggest that you use. Also, if you're running an e-commerce site or a membership site, you might want to contact the plugin or software creator of your e-commerce program and ask them if there are known issues with their software and expires headers. And if so, what do you need to do to avoid those problems while enjoying the benefits of the speed increase? Now first, let's go ahead and run a test to see where we are in regards to the browser caching, also known as expires headers. Now I'm going to use GT metrics because this guy uses two tests, that being the page speed from Google and Y-slow from the developers over at Yahoo. So let's first off go ahead and copy my URL into my clipboard. Come on back here to gtmetrics.com, paste it right in here, then click on Go. And depending upon the size of your site, would depend on how long this is going to take. Mine's just a dummy site with not a lot of content on the front page, so it's not going to take long to give it a test. And we test pretty crappy. So we've got a 68 with page speed and a 76 with Y-slow. Now what we're going to be adding will not necessarily increase these scores, but it will increase an item that affects these scores. That is, with page speed, leverage browser caching pretty poorly with a 25, and with Y-slow, we're looking for add expires headers. They're the same thing, tomato, tomato, just with Y-slow they call it expires headers. With page speed, they call it browser caching. But here, we scored a big fat 0. So let's go ahead and up these numbers. Now, first off, we want to get the code that we want to add to our .htaccess file, and that can be had at a site called HTML5 Boilerplate. And whenever we get to HTML5boilerplate.com, left-click on Source Code, come on over here and left-click on .htaccess. This just has a whole bunch of different code snippets for your .htaccess file, one of which is the one for expires headers. So we can just scroll all the way down here, and I'm looking for something inside of this title area that says expires headers. Now you can do a search like Control F and just type in your search box expires headers, and it will be much faster than what I'm doing here. But I believe we're right here. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Everything between this box here and this box here, I want to copy into my clipboard. So from the opening if module to the closing if module contains several different code snippets for your .htaccess file that regulates particular items or particular elements within your WordPress site. Now then, if you decide not to have some of these items, like maybe you don't want to have this one here, or maybe you don't want to have these here, you do want to have this one here, expires active on, because that's going to turn things on for you. Let's go ahead and right click and copy this. Now once you got this copied, you want to head on over to your cPanel control panel. I've already logged in here, and then go to your file manager, just left click on that, and you want to look for the .htaccess file in the root directory of your WordPress install. Select it, and then right click, and then left click on code edit, or select it and come on up here and left click on code editor. Either way, you'll end up at the same spot. And the big difference between code editor and editor is that with code editor you got these numbers over here. And paste that code in here, and there we are. Now then again, you want to make sure that this is included. You might decide not to have this guy in there. Totally up to you. I would say leave it in there, and if it doesn't cause problems, then you're good to go. Now, to further explain this, if you come on down here under Media, let's say under Images that you've got a cat image on your WordPress site, and for some odd reason, you all of a sudden do not like cats. You want to change that image to a dog. Now then, if you have this set for, let's say, 1 year, then your visitor, upon the first visit to your site, will get that cat image in their browser. Boom, it's stored there for the next year. And 2 months down the line, you've changed that image to a dog. Now then, if you do not change the name of that image, then every time that visitor comes back to your site, they're not going to see the beauty of the dog. They're only going to see that cat image until this guy expires, or until they clear their browser cache, which they can do by holding the control key down and hitting their F5 key. So if you do add images or any content, make sure that you're doing so with a new name. Make sure that that content has a different name than an original or an existing element. Otherwise, your visitor, whenever they visit your site, will only get the item in the cache. And one thing on this that I do not like is this guy right here, the favicon. A favicon, by the way, is this little image right up here. That's the favicon. That, for me anyway, never changes. If I'm going to put one up, it's going to stay there for as long as I have that particular domain. So having this at 1 week is silly to me. That should be forever, but I don't think there is a forever, so I'm going to go ahead and go with a year. So any changes you make here, come on up here, click on Save Changes. We're done here. We're going to close this guy out. We're done here. We're going to close this out. And let's come on back here. And remember, for the Y slow, we've got a fat 0, and for the page speed, we had 25. Let's go ahead and rerun this test. Now our numbers here under page speed did not improve a whole lot. Well, actually didn't improve at all. They did over here under Y slow. So you can see with Y slow, they do have a lot more emphasis on the benefits of adding expires headers. As a matter of fact, if we come on down here, now we're under page speed, and where are we at here? Leverage browser caching right here. We got 100. So from 25 to 100, major improvement there. Under Y slow, add expires header from, what was it, 0 to 89, another major improvement. Now that's doing things manually. There's another way, and that is by adding a plugin called Auto Optimize or Auto Optimize, or however you pronounce that. This is a plugin that pretty much does the same exact thing. I myself would rather have a limited number of plugins on my WordPress site, because the more plugins that you have, the more load you have on resources, and in some cases, what little speed improvements you have from the plugin can be eaten up by the number of resources that's being used on your server. So this is totally up to you, however you want to go. Myself, I'd much rather hard code if possible, and by doing what I just showed you, you're not adding any additional plugins, and it works just fine. But if you don't want to get your hands dirty by going into your .htaccess file, and that's the case with a lot of folks, they just are just terrified of getting into the code thing. If that's the case, here's a plugin that will help you out immensely. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on adding expires headers to leverage browser caching. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video will detail some easy to follow ways to increase the speed that it takes for your home page to load in the browsers. Now, if your blog posts contain images, then the first thing that you want to consider is optimizing those images that are currently on your site. Now, you can do this with the help of plugins like EWWW Image Optimizer or Lazy Load or Hammy. All of these can be found in the WordPress.org plugin directory. Just go to WordPress.org, go to plugins, and then do a search for that particular plugin. Or just do a Google search for WordPress Image Optimizers, and you'll have several to choose from. Now, if your home page has a lot of image icons that link to like social media sites or background images or other images that show up on any and all of your pages, then you might want to have what are called CSS image sprites generated and put to use instead of having each individual image called on each time a page of your site is loaded into your visitor's browser. The load time speed is not increased that much by using sprites, but if your site generates a lot of traffic, then using sprites will majorly reduce the bandwidth usage. Now, to learn more about sprites, you can just simply Google CSS sprites or CSS sprite tutorials, or check out sites like SpriteCow.com or CSSsprites.com or SpriteMe.org. Okay, now that you have your awesome images all nice and optimized, you should consider using the More tag on all of your posts. For example, if we take a look at my post here, and I've got a ton of text, I've got pictures and videos, and this is all just one post, by the way. And if you have, say, 10 to 15 or 20 posts set up to show on your homepage, then your visitor's browser will be loading all that stuff each and every time that they go to your site. And that's just using a ton of your server's bandwidth and taking a lot of time to fully load in your visitor's browser when it doesn't have to. So let's take a look at the post editor and use that More tag that I was referring to. So right here is that particular post with all the images and the videos and the text. And if right up here, say somewhere in an area of the beginning of that post, you can kind of cut things off to where it might entice the visitor to click on the link to go to the rest of that post, kind of like a cliffhanger at the end of a TV show to get you to come back next week to watch the rest of it. With that thought in mind, let's say right here, I put my cursor, come on up here, and this is the More tag right here. Just click on that. Now let's go ahead and update. So now, instead of having all the text, all the images, all of that stuff showing up on the home page, it's still going to show up on the actual post page. That's not affecting the post page at all. But if we come back here to the home page and refresh, come on back up here to the top, you can see that that one post that had all the images, the videos, and that ton of text has just these 4 lines and a link here that says continue reading. Now all this is customizable. You can put whatever you want in here, and you can put that link anywhere in that post. If you want to have that first image or that first video to show up on the home page, then move that More tag down below that. But imagine if you had something like this on each one of these posts, your front page or your home page would load in seconds, maybe even 1 second. Another thing is the number of posts that are showing up on your home page. Let's check that out. So you can reduce that too by coming over to Settings, go to Reading, maybe adjust the blog pages show at most to say 5. That way there's only 5 posts that show up on the home page, and then your home page will load lickety-split. And you can have, let's go ahead and save this real quick. Okay, so now we've got the settings saved. Let's come on back over to our home page, refresh. And you see how that went from a little bitty dinky thing to a much bigger scroller? Well, that's because we don't have all those tons of posts on here. We only have 5 of them. And if we come down to the very bottom, you can see this link right here. And of course, this is theme specific. Depending upon how your theme is set up, it may look a little bit different. This is the default 2013 theme. But if we click on this, it'll then show more posts. And if you do have a sidebar over here, you might have something over here for most recent posts or categories that will further help your visitors navigate through your site. The key thing though is to increase the speed at which your home page loads, and you do that by minimizing the amount of stuff that you got on your home page. And speaking of stuff, you might consider the overall design of your site or theme. If you got a whole bunch of stuff going on in the sidebars and pop-ups and flyouts and other gizmos that you're using to try and gather leads or opt-ins or sell affiliate products or AdSense ads, you might take a long, hard look at scaling some of that stuff back, especially if you find that a particular item is not working. Again, every little tidbit on your home page will affect the load time in your visitor's browser. So if it's not doing you any good, get it out of there. Now, lastly, if you're using a bunch of plugins on your WordPress site, you should check out a particular plugin called P3, or Plugin Performance Profiler. And what this does is just like it says here, it sees which plugins are slowing down your site. It puts together a report for you, and it makes it a lot easier for you to make a more informed decision on, do you really need that plugin to do that particular thing? Because you can now see how it's affecting the load time of your site. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on optimizing your WordPress homepage. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. You should test the load times of your websites often, especially if you are regularly adding content, plugins, or testing new themes. Many tools you can use to run these load speed tests are free. One such tool is called YSlow. This video will give you a tour of YSlow and cover some of the major components that will help you get the most out of your site speed testing with this free tool. YSlow is from the development department of Yahoo. It's an add-on or plugin for many of the top browsers except Internet Explorer. Opera, Safari, Chrome, and Firefox. Initially, YSlow was developed for a Firefox developers plugin called Firebug. Now let's head on over to my Firefox and Chrome browsers and have a look. Now you can get the add-on or plugin installed on your browser one of a couple of different ways. I'm going to show you what I consider to be the easiest way, and that is to head on over to yslow.org. Now depending upon the browser you want to install it on, would depend on which one of these guys down here you want to pick. If you are a Firefox user, frankly, I would suggest getting Firefox, if nothing else, for this particular test. But if you're more of a Chrome or Opera or Safari person, then there you go. You just simply click on that particular link, and it will take you through the instructions on installing YSlow for that particular browser. Let's come on back here. Now I've already got the YSlow plugin or extension added to my Chrome browser. That's the one we're looking at now. And over here on my Firefox browser, it's part of the Firebug plugin. So for here, you'd want to first install Firebug. It's installed pretty much the same way. You would go to Tools, go to Add-ons, do a search for Firebug, install it, and then come on over to yslow.org, click on Firefox, and then install or add the YSlow plugin. And at this point, I know it does say add to Firefox, but in actuality, you're adding it to the Firebug plugin that has already been added to your Firefox browser. Let's come on back here. Let's go ahead and explain a little bit about the YSlow tool. See, YSlow has developed 23 different testable rules. Actually, there's like 34 that they found, but of those, only 23 are actually testable that are related to the optimum load time of a web page. And whenever you run the YSlow test on your particular web page, it compares what you have to the optimum way things should be, according to them anyway, and gives you a score based on the results of that test. For example, if we come on over to my site here, and again I'm on Firefox, and that is important too because the results that I found on Chrome differs from every other test run on the other browsers. So I prefer not to use Chrome for my YSlow operations. But if you're a diehard Chrome fan, you do have that option. But just be aware that the test results might be a little bit off. Okay, that said, I'm on Firefox and I'm on my site here. Come on up to the Firebug plugin up top here. Click on that and it opens up. Actually, by default, it's going to open up and look something like this. But the YSlow plugin or add-on to the Firebug plugin is over here close to the far right end. So you just click on that, come on down here, and you have the option to check that box to auto-run YSlow each time this web page is loaded. That's going to be a little bit more of a load on my server than what I want, and frankly, it's not necessary. To run the test, you simply click on Run Test. Another thing I want to point out too is that you've got these 4 tabs here: Home, Grade, Components, Stats, and Tools. You do not have the Tools option in the Chrome browser. Another reason not to use Chrome for this test. Another thing is that by default, you're going to be starting off on the rule set for YSlow v2. Rule set are those 23 testable rules. If we come on back here just for a second, scroll on down this page here, this gives you a list of those 23 testable rules. And if you click on each one of these, it'll take you to that particular part of the YSlow page that explains in detail what they're talking about for that particular rule. Let's head on back to our test here. And unless your website is like Huffington Post or CBS or something like that on a large scale, then really all you need is the rule set for a small site or blog. Now you can come in here and edit that and even create your own, because these are the default boxes that are checked, or the rules that are checked for the small site or blog, for the V1 Classic, or the full-blown YSlow. This one here has 23 of the 23 rules checked, Classic 13 of the 23, and the small site 15 of the 23. And if you want a new set or a customized set, maybe you want to run a set for every site that you have because every site that you have is created differently, then you have that ability. Click on New Set, it blanks them all out, check the ones that you want, and then come on down here a little bit more, save rule set as, give it a name, bada bing, bada boom, there you go. You have a new rule set over here to the right that will also show up here on this drop down. So I just want to make sure that all those boxes are checked for our small site or blog rule set. And we will now come on back over to our home, click on Run Test. And here it gives me an overall performance score of 88, which isn't too bad. But the more important part of this test is that it tells you here the areas that can use some improvement. And you can click on the links here. It'll open up over here, give you a bit more of an explanation of what part of that particular rule needs to be improved upon. And down at the bottom, gives you a little link to where you can read more about that particular rule set and what they suggest you can do to get it fixed. And if this is not totally clear to you, then let's get on out of here. Over here to the far right, up top, under Help, we can go to the YSlow community. It's basically a YSlow forum, and you can do a search here for that particular rule set, and I think that was gzip or compression. And chances are, since this group, this Yahoo group, has been around since 2007, there's a pretty good chance that your question has already been answered. If not, just sign into your Yahoo account, and if you don't have one, it doesn't cost anything to get one. Just go ahead and log in, ask your question, and then just wait a little while until your answer is provided. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing on the Chrome browser. browser. Come on over to the same site. Come on up here. Now, whenever you install the YSlow plugin on a Chrome browser, you're going to get this little icon up here in the top right area. Just click on that, squeeze this down so it shows up in the video here. As you can see here, this checkbox is something totally different than it was on Firefox, and again, you don't have the tools option up here, but everything else is pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and run this test. I think this test on the Firefox ran up with a 88 score. This one's a little more lenient. It gives me a 92. It gives me an A, where I believe on Firefox it was a B, and it's still set for the same rule set as it was on Firefox. Now, through my test, this same site on Opera and Safari provided exactly the same results as it did with Firefox. So the only one out of those 4 browsers that were tested that were different was the Chrome browser. So again, my money would not be on using Chrome for using the YSlow speed testing tool. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video on the YSlow site speed testing tool. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video is going to walk you through the basic setup of the W3 Total Cache plugin. Now, I say basic setup because there's a bunch of various settings you can tweak in order to get an even faster and more efficient loading WordPress site. But even with just the basics that we're going to be covering, there's a huge speed increase of your site's load time. Let me go ahead and show you first off by running a test of our site. If we come over here to our site, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy the URL into my clipboard, come on over here to gtmetrics.com. And this site does a test of 2 different programs. One program from Google called PageSpeed, another program from the developers at Yahoo called YSlow. Let's go ahead and paste our URL in here, click on Go, and depending upon the size of your site, the amount of plugins and all that kind of stuff would depend on how long this is going to take. But this being a dummy site, it's not going to take long at all. There we are. Not very impressive numbers, but that's about to change. Now, we're going to go ahead and install, activate, and configure just the basics of our W3 Total Cache plugin. Come back here and click on the retest page link, and hopefully these numbers will change. Spoiler alert, it will. So let's come on back over here to our dashboard area, go to Plugins, go to Add New, and by the way, before you do any major changes like adding a plugin that you're not familiar with or even deleting a plugin you're not familiar with, you should always be on the safe side and do a full site backup. That being a backup of your files, images, the whole 9 yards, and your database. So let's go ahead and pretend for a second that we've already done that. Now we go ahead and type in here, make sure we're in the search section, type in here W3 Total Cache, click on Search Plugins, and it'll probably be the very first one on the list. Right here we are. You want to see more about it, you can click on Details. And by the way, if through the process of your installation and configuring you run into roadblocks, right here on the WordPress.org site under Plugins, W3 Total Cache, you can come on down here and there's tons of information under the FAQ, other notes, change log, stats, and right here under Support, you might even find that somebody else has the same question that you have. So just come on in here, spend some time, check these out if you find the need to. Hopefully this video will cover all your questions. But let's go ahead and install. Click on OK. And once it's installed, we want to activate. And once it's activated, you might even get an error message up here. Just go ahead and go through the process of answering that question or removing that error message. But you're going to see down here a new link in your sidebar called Performance. Now over here, there's a few items we're not going to mess with, and that is the user agent groups, referrer groups. They basically deal with configuring your mobile sites. CDN, that's Content Delivery Network, monitoring extensions. These are just beyond the scope of the basics that this video is going to cover. But here you have the FAQ, the support, basically the same stuff that I just showed you over here on the WordPress.org site is right here on your site right now. Oh yeah, and if we go to FAQ, come up here to Help, you'll find even more information. So what we're going to do first off is take a peek at the general settings page just so that you know you're not going to mess with any of this stuff right now. This first one here allows you to enable the preview mode so you can kind of kick the tires over your settings before you actually go live. And that way if you find that something's not working or something's broken, then you can go back and tweak the installation or tweak the configuration until it is working through the preview mode. Then you can deploy it and then disable the preview mode, boom, you're live. But at this point, we're going to leave all this stuff alone. We're going to go into each one of these pages configuration section, which is over here on the left sidebar, for page cache, for minify, and for the database cache, object cache, and browser cache. We're going to go into the sections over here to configure each one of these sections. Then we'll come back here and click on the enable button. So page cache first. Most all of these I'm going to check, except for this guy, the cache 404. Those two I'm not going to check. And if you have a members plugin like S2 member or something else, and you've got other levels or roles installed on this particular site, they're going to be defined out here as well. And if you do not want to cache pages for any of those roles, then you check that box and check the appropriate boxes of those you don't want to cache. This cache preload comes in pretty handy if you have a sitemap, which I do not, but you should. But this is a dummy test site, so I don't have a sitemap installed. But this allows your visitors' first time visit to your site to be a little bit quicker if you have these items checked and the sitemap URL installed here. Purge policy, the defaults are fine, advanced is fine, and save all settings. Any changes you make sure that you click on save all settings. So that's the page cache. Let's go to minify. And if I'm going a little bit faster, well, just pause the video, rewind, just absorb it as much as you can, because I can, in fact, spend 30 minutes going over all these details, but I'm trying not to. So rewrite URL structure. Leave that checked. HTML, check the top line. JS minify, make sure that's checked. Make sure CSS minify is checked. The advanced section is fine by default. Click on Save All Settings. Database and object cache, there's really nothing here, but I just want to show you that you can go in here and configure this further if you'd like. If you do make any changes, click on Save All Settings. Likewise with object cache, there's even less to change, but if you do make any changes, Save All Settings. Browser cache, the last one we're going to work with, I go in here and check all these boxes except the one for 404, this one here. So I check all those boxes, and then the rest of these are checked by default. Just to make sure they are all checked, click on Save All Settings. Now that we've got all those items configured, we now come back to the General Settings page and enable them. Enable. Disk Enhanced is fine unless you find there's an issue. Then you come in here and you can go with Basic. If you have a dedicated or virtual server or multiple servers, then you might find one of these being a better choice. But on most cases, we're dealing with shared servers. Disk Enhanced is going to work best for you. Minify, make sure that's checked, and auto is checked unless, of course, there's an issue. Then you can come back in here and specify which items should be minified by going to manual. Database cache enabled, object cache enabled, browser cache is enabled by default. Now the CDN goes beyond the basics of this video, but this will definitely make your site load that much faster. So if you have the opportunity to work with the CDN, be it Max CDN, which is one of the better ones in my opinion, or even something like your self-hosted FTP, use it. If so, then check enabled. Varnish, I've never messed with that. And Cloudflare is a pretty cool tool as well. They've got a free option, works great in security and making your site that much faster. But this goes beyond the basic section of this video. But if you did have Cloudflare set up, click on enable. And Relic, never mess with that, but you have the option there. And if you want the page speed widget on your dashboard, grab the API key, slap it in there. I don't, so I'm not. Debug, you've got that option here. And if you wanted to save these settings, once you find that everything's working properly, and you want to add these same exact settings to other sites, you can do that here by downloading them. And then on your other sites, just install the W3 Total Cache plugin, upload the file, you're good to go. And if you want to clear everything out, go from scratch, just click on this button right here, and it won't uninstall W3 Total Cache, but it will bring it back to as if you just installed it. Click on Save All Settings. Okay, I think that's dealing with our permalinks. I thought I had that taken care of, but let's come on over to Settings here. Go to Permalinks. I thought I had that, but let's go ahead. Make sure we got custom structure in there. Click on Save Changes. Let's go back into our Performance, General Settings, and see if that red notice is gone. Okay, we're good. Click on Empty Page Cache. And again, if you wanted to kick the tires first, you can click on Enable. That enables the preview mode. Then once you've checked everything out, you can click on Deploy. As it says up here, it ain't going to work until you disable the preview mode. Now then, let's go retest. How's that for an improvement? And that is how easy it is to install, activate, and configure the basics of the W3 Total Cache plugin. That's going to bring us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. Your WordPress site is written in a code language called PHP and uses a database to keep everything organized, like your usernames, your post revisions, and a whole lot of other stuff you really don't think about whenever you sit down to write a post. Now, just like whenever you drive your car on a regular basis, well, every now and then you get a tune-up on your car so that it continues to run at its best and gets the best gas mileage. Well, your WordPress site also needs a tune-up on the database every now and then to keep your site running at its best and loading in your visitor's browser as fast as possible. Well, this video is going to show you how to do a basic tune-up or optimize your WordPress database. Now, I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. One is going to actually get your hands dirty, so to speak, by going into your PHP My Admin, your database, and manually optimizing your database. Another way, and quite possibly the easier way, and more than likely the way you're going to be doing it, is by using a WordPress plugin so you can do all of this work from within the dashboard area of your WordPress site. So first off, let's go ahead and test to make sure our site's working and nothing's broken. Boom, good. Now, it's also a good idea before you start poking around with codes and databases and adding plugins you're not familiar with to do a full site backup. That includes your files and the database. So, assuming we've already done that, let's go ahead and log into our cPanel control panel. Scroll on down until you get to the PHP My Admin section, which is in the database area. Click on that. And if you have several WordPress sites, you'll probably have several databases. Just select the one that you want to optimize, and quite frankly, I'd say go ahead and optimize every one of them, but I only have the one here, so I'm going to select that, and it's going to show us all the tables within that database. Now, depending upon how your site is set up, this being just a test or dummy site, there's not a lot going on here, you may even have closer to 40 or 50 different tables in your database. But over here on the far right corner, this column that says overhead, this is the column that needs to be cleared out. And as you can see, there's no overhead on my site, but if your site is heavily used, chances are you might have a lot of numbers over here. And what you want to do is select the tables that have the numbers in the overhead column, or if you do have any overhead, then you'll have a link down here, kind of like right where a data dictionary link is, and this link will say check tables having overhead. You just click on that link and boom, it'll automatically check all the tables that have the overhead in this column. Then once those tables are checked, come over here to the drop-down arrow, click on Optimize Table, and you are good to go. Within a split second, all those tables, all that overhead will be eliminated, and you'll have an optimized database. At this point, go ahead and do another backup to kind of get rid of the other backup that you just did, because this one is now fully optimized. And to do a quick backup, just click on Export. The default settings are just fine for what we're doing. Click on Go, navigate to the folder or the location on your computer where you want to send the backup to, and then just click on Save. So that's how you can do it the manual way. As far as the easier way, the more automatic way, if you will, it's by using a plugin called WP-DB Manager. And you can find this at wordpress.org/plugins/WP-DB Manager. I'm going to go ahead and install this now, kind of demonstrate the whole process here. So let's go to our dashboard area where our plugins are at. And if you're not currently logged in, then you'll probably get a box that pops up here that'll ask for your WordPress login credentials, your username and your password. And then come over to Plugins, click on Add New, type in here, or as in my case, paste, WP-DB Manager, click on Search Plugins. And if you want to learn more about it, just check out the details here or head on over to the WordPress.org page here. But we're just going to go ahead and install it now. Click on OK. Then once it's installed, you want to click on Activate Plugin. And more than likely, you'll get this same error message that I just did. Let's go ahead and take care of this right now. It says we got us a .htaccess file in this folder right here that actually needs to be moved to this folder right here. So you want to open up either your cPanel control panel or your FTP client. So since I've already got my cPanel control panel open, let's do that. Come on up here to our file manager and open this guy up here. And that's the directory that we want to move that .htaccess file to. But we got to get it first. And it's in the plugins directory in the WP-DB manager directory. Open that up. And here it is. So I want to move this into that other directory. And here's one way you can do that. Over here on the left, let's go ahead and open up till we get to that directory. Right here it is. I'm going to just left click, hold, and drag it on over there. And it's gone out of here. Let's open up that directory to see that it's in here. Now here's the kicker. This needs to be a .htaccess file. Right now it's an htaccess.txt. No problemo. We're going to rename that. Just select this, right click, left click on rename, and I'm just going to delete that .txt. And at the beginning, put the dot. Simple Simon. Click on rename file. Now it's a .htaccess file. Let's come on back here, refresh our page, and that's going to be gone. Hopefully. Because that's the thing though, it's in that error box there, it doesn't say anything about changing the htaccess.txt file into a .htaccess file. I guess they figure you already know that. Well, you know that now. Okay, so now once that's all done, we can come over here to the database link on the left sidebar, click on database at the top, and this is basically what we just saw over at phpMyAdmin. So if you have any overhead, the numbers are going to be shown right there. Backup, this is how we can manually do it from within our WordPress site. We just come on down here, click on backup, and that's where it's going to put it at, that same directory we just moved that htaccess file to. Click on backup, done. Now, if you want to manage those backups that you've been doing, either manually or automatic, and I'll get to the automatic part here in a second, then you can either just select the backup and email it to yourself, download it to your computer, or if you've had a problem with your site as a result of a messed up database, select the last working database you have, click on restore, bing, bang, boom, you're good to go. Now then, if you find that there are items that require optimization, like that overhead stuff, come over here and check out the tables that you want to be optimized. Now I'd say go ahead and check yes on all of these. If there are certain tables that you know should not be optimized or should not be repaired, then make sure you've got no, because this is going to come in handy here in just a second whenever we get to the automation part. Now then just click on optimize and you're good. Likewise with repaired database, check those tables you want to be repaired, click on repair and you're good. Now if you want to get rid of a table or clean it out, select the table and either clean it out or get rid of it altogether. And if you're familiar enough with the database to be able to run SQL queries, then you have that option to do that right inside of your WordPress site right here. Now under DB options, this is where you can get all things done automatically. Most of the time the default settings are just fine. And you just come on down here and set this up the way that you want this. If you want the automatic backup of the database to be done once a week, once a month, once a day. This depends a lot on the activity that takes place within your WordPress site. Likewise with optimizing, how often do you want that? Repairing, how often do you want that? And then save changes and it's good. And if you find just absolutely no use for this particular plugin any longer, then you've got that option right here to uninstall it. And that brings us to the end of this video on optimizing your database and your WordPress site, both manually outside of WordPress and automatically and manually inside of WordPress. Thanks for watching and you have a great day. There are many online tools that can test the load time of your web pages. This video will show you one of these tools and how to put it to use. This tool is called Google PageSpeed Insights. Google PageSpeed comes in two parts. One part, the one this video will cover, is to analyze your web page speed and report to you the results along with suggestions on how to optimize those results. The other part, the PageSpeed service, is a service that will actually automate the optimization process of your web pages to meet the Google's web performance best practices. Google PageSpeed Analysis is a free tool that you can use either online or add it as a plugin or add-on to your Firefox or Chrome browsers. And I'll demonstrate that for you here in just a second. The online tool is actually the best because any updates that Google does to PageSpeed is first done to the online tool, and then later the browser plugins are updated. So for the latest and greatest, you might consider just sticking to the online tool. Now, the overall goal of optimizing your web pages, no matter what tools you're going to use, is to minimize the file size and to minimize the number of times that it takes your site to make a request to your site server, or GET as it's also called. What I mean by that is every URL on your site will require a request to your server for the contents of that URL to display. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's head on over to one of my demonstration sites here and check out the page source or the code that makes up this site. I'm going to right click, then left click on View Page Source. This gives us all the guts of the page there. And you see each one of these URLs here. In order to make that page load, to make it look the way that it does, every time that somebody opens up that URL, each one of these guys are sent off to the server where they're hosted at and are requesting, hey, bring this information back here to this guy's browser so we can make this web page work properly. So ideally, you would have, and it's impossible, but you would have one URL on the page source and all this other stuff would be in one line. That being a very small file and one GET or one request. Now that's never going to happen because that would just be a dorky looking web page. But that's what you're shooting for, to have the minimum number of requests and the smallest file size you can get overall. That includes images, videos, text, and everything. Let's go ahead and close this out here. Now, every time that your site makes a request to your server, it's also using bandwidth, which in some hosting packages, you are given a certain amount per month before additional charges begin. Even the unlimited bandwidth hosts have what's called fair use policies, which are usually not part of the advertising, by the way. So yeah, I know, it's hard to believe that a company would actually say one thing but mean something else. Okay, end of the commentary. When you have reached what is deemed as the limits of that fair use policy, your site can then be throttled back to a standstill or in some cases even be shut down. But my point here is that by reducing the number of requests to your server, you are also minimizing the bandwidth your site is using. So this goal is going to do a few things for you. Number one, it's going to speed up your web pages in your visitor's browser, and that's going to make them happy and much more closer to being a lead or a customer of yours. Number two, since Google uses the speed that your web pages load as part of their ranking process of its search results, you stand a far better chance of landing on page one of those search results, which will in turn bring you more free traffic and more of those potentially paying customers. And number three, reduce your overall bandwidth usage, which can save you money. Okay, now that we've touched on the what and the why of using Google's PageSpeed Insights tool, let's get to the how. Now right now I'm on my Chrome browser, and if we head on over to developers.google.com/speed, that's going to bring us to the PageSpeed page, and on this page is quite a few items related to the PageSpeed service. The one we're going to be dealing with here or diving more into is the PageSpeed Insights. One thing I want to point out, if you scroll down close to the bottom here, this link here will take you to the Performance Best Practices, which is basically a set of rules that Google uses to determine the optimum page speed of a particular website or web page. And that's what these guys are testing here under the PageSpeed Insights. Let's go ahead and click on this guy here. Oh, and by the way, while I'm here on this page, over here on the left, if you click on Community, and then click on PageSpeed Insights here under the group name, this takes you to kind of like a forum or a Google group of page insights. So any questions that you have that you just can't find the answer to by maybe using the Google search tool, head on over here, sign in if you haven't already, and either do a search here for your answer or go ahead and post your question in here, and in no time at all, you're going to get results. So this is definitely a page you might want to be bookmarking. Okay, so that's that. Come on back here, and click on Analyze with PageSpeed Insights. And right here is the online tool I was referring to, and I'll show you the add-on or the plugin section here in just a second. Let's go ahead and test my site. Copy the URL, paste it right in here, click on Analyze. And it's going to do a couple of things for us here. And this is not done with the plugin. So again, another reason behind using the online tool versus the plugin or the add-on or extension, whatever you want to call it. But it gives you a test for both a mobile version of your site, or how your site looks on a mobile device, as well as how it will test or look on a desktop. And of course, the higher the number, the better your site is ranking. And you want to get the highest number possible, that being 100. But over here under the suggestion summary, you've got 3 colors, red, yellow, and green. The red is the items that you really want to pay attention to and try to fix as soon as possible. The yellow, it's okay. If you've got time and it's not that big of a deal, go ahead and put some effort into fixing it. And then the greens, hey, you got those perfect. Don't worry about those. And if you scroll down to the bottom here, you got the little color code that explains pretty much what I just told you. But under each one of these items is a link to learn more about that particular item. Gives you a little description here. Your page has 2 blocking script resources and 3 blocking CSS resources. What the heck does that mean? Click on Learn More. And each one of these links here will take you to a page that will explain more in detail about that particular element and how you can better optimize that element, which overall will better optimize your entire page. And you can see they're going to be a little bit different for the mobile versus the desktop. So that's the online tool. Let's go ahead and head over to my Firefox browser and check out the plugin version of this. And on the same page, that's the developers.google.com/speed. The link over here called Analyze with Chrome and Firefox. Just click on that link. And you've got the 2 options here. And as it says right here, the online version is pretty much a better bet. But if you want, you can install the Firefox extension. Or if you're on the Chrome browser, you can do that as well here. Let's go ahead and install the Firefox extension. And what this does actually is it installs an extension to the Firebug web development tool. So technically you have to have the Firebug web development tool already installed, which I do. And let's go ahead and restart now. And you can get to the Firebug/PageSpeed extension a couple of ways. Mine is right up here in the top right corner. I can just click on that and it opens it up to the PageSpeed tab of the Firebug tool. All this here is part of the Firebug tool. Or go ahead and close this out here. Go to the page that you want to test, and anywhere on the page, just right-click. Okay, you can't see. Let's go up here and right-click. Left-click on Inspect Element with Firebug, and then right up here, you've got the various tabs. This is the Firebug toolbar. Just click on Page Speed, and here we are. And here you've got some resources. You've got the help. You can analyze either the entire page or certain elements of the page, and you've got some additional information down here. Let's go ahead and click on Analyze Performance just to kind of give you a comparison between this one and the online tool. As you can see, there's nothing on here, currently anyway, about the mobile device. This is all just desktop versions. But like the online tool, each one of these are links that you can click on for additional information related to that particular item. And in most cases, recommendations on what you can do to better optimize that item. And that's a rundown on the PageSpeed Insights tool and a little bit of an overview of other elements of the PageSpeed service. And that's going to bring us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. Whether your site is a dynamic site like a WordPress site or a single page site with lots of images and videos on it, the time that it takes for your website to load in your visitor's browser is very important for at least a couple of reasons. One, if it takes longer than just a few seconds for your site to load, then you take the risk of your visitor quickly moving on to the next shiny object or cat video instead of becoming your next customer or lead. Another and somewhat related reason for a fast-loading website is that Google prefers fast instead of slow. Matt Cutts, who is a software engineer at Google, says that page load time is one of the factoring elements of search rankings. Now that was back in 2010, and just lately, Google has, or will very soon, will add the same site speed penalties to mobile websites. So, in addition to keeping your visitor happy with a fast loading page, you will also keep Google happy, and they will in turn reward you with better rankings for your search engine results, which will hopefully reward you with more visitors that you will then hopefully convert to customers or leads. So whether or not you're a fan of Google and all the slaps and pandas and other animals that Google throws at us webmasters, it is in your business's best interest to strive to have your website load as fast as it possibly can and to keep it that way. So when it comes to your website, speed is a good thing. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. The W3 Total Cache plugin is a powerful tool to help speed up the load time of your WordPress site. But if you decide later on to uninstall the plugin, you might find it a bit tricky to get all the bits and pieces of the plugin removed. This video will walk you through the steps of totally uninstalling the W3 Total Cache plugin. Now to do this, you're going to need to edit the wp-config.php file in your WordPress root directory. So you're going to need either access to your cPanel Control Panel's file manager or an FTP client so that you can either edit the live files or download the files, edit them, then upload them and overwrite the old files. Now, I'm going to be using the file manager from my cPanel Control Panel mainly because it's just easier to demonstrate in this video. So if we were to head over to the plugins section of our WordPress site, normally to uninstall a plugin, you simply locate the plugin, deactivate it, then once it's deactivated, you simply delete it. But you can't do that with this guy. It's a little trickier than that. So that's what you do not want to do. You do not want to just come in here, deactivate, delete. Won't work. You go into your Control Panel's file manager, and before you do anything with the wp-config.php file, you first want to do a full backup. Now this is just hopefully common sense at this point, that you do a full backup of your entire site files and your database before you either remove a plugin that you're not sure about how to do it or install a plugin that you're not sure about what's going to happen. That way, if something bad does happen, you got the backup of a working site that you can always fall back on. So let's pretend for a second that we've already done our full backup of the site files and our database. And just to be on the safe side, we're going to go ahead and do a separate backup of just the htaccess file. So I select that, go to download, then navigate to the location on your computer where you want to download that htaccess file to. Now you're probably going to be deleting it here in just a second anyway, but at least ways you'll know where it's at in case you need it. And then save. Now that we've got it backed up, let's delete this guy. So we're going to create a fresh one here in just a second. Now we want to go ahead and edit our wp-config file. So you select that and either right click and then select code edit, or just with it selected, come up here and select code edit. Now code editor and edit is the same thing, only the code editor you got numbers on the lines where edit's not, so I just prefer the numbers. Anyway, come over here, click on edit, and right up here at the top is the code for the W3 Total Cache plugin. We just want to delete from that slash all the way over to here. And once that's deleted, click on Save Changes, close out. So that's step one. We're done here. Now we're done with the wp-config.php file. Now we want to go into the wp-content directory. Just double click on that. Now we want to go into the plugins directory, but we'll come back here in a second and delete this guy, this guy, this guy, and that guy. So open up plugins, select the W3 Total Cache directory, and delete it. Now when we come back to the wp-content directory, go up one level, and we select this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and that guy. So we've got 3 files and 2 folders. Delete those. And I think we're pretty well done inside of our file manager. Now we want to go in and rebuild our .htaccess file from scratch. So we come on back here to the dashboard area of our WordPress site. Come on into settings, go to permalinks, and this is what we want here. So we want to select that, click on Save Changes, and even though whenever we got here, the post name was already selected, what that does is that creates your .htaccess file. But since we just deleted it, we need to recreate it. So just make sure that's selected and that box is filled in there with post name or whatever you choose. Mine is going to be post name. And then click on Save Changes. And if we come on back here to our file manager, you'll see that the .htaccess file has been recreated. And that is how we totally uninstall every little bit of the W3 Total Cache plugin. Just to make doubly sure that our site still works and nothing's broken, come on back here and refresh. And we are good to go. That's going to bring us to the end of this video on uninstalling your W3 Total Cache plugin. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. This video will walk you through the task of compressing your WordPress site so that it will load much faster in your visitor's browser. Now, adding code to your website's server can be scary, but my goal with this video is to help you increase the load speed of your WordPress site and we move all that scariness along the way. Now what we're going to do is use something called gzip compression. Now if you have ever downloaded and unzipped a zip file or right-clicked on a file and zipped it up, well then you are kind of familiar with this gzip process because it's pretty much the same thing, only the zipping and unzipping is done automatically and your site is served up in your visitor's browser at around 50 to 70% of a smaller size. So first off, I want to show you a test on my website before the compression. Then we're going to do the compression. Then we're going to retest to see the almost instant speed increase. And by the way, there are several ways that I'm going to be showing you how you can actually compress your sites. So with that said, off to the test. This is the site here that we're going to be testing and compressing and then retesting. I'm going to go ahead and copy that URL into my clipboard. This is the site that I'm going to use to test the compression. Now there's quite a few of these online compression test sites that you can check with, but this is just one of them that I'm going to be using in this video. So right here, by the way, whenever you get here, what'smyip.org, come on down here, click on HTTP compression. Right here, enter the URL to test, click on test. Gives you a nice little sad sound, sorry, and of course this big red stop sign looking thing. That tells you that it is not compressed, but it tells you right here, if it were compressed, the potential savings and what it is and what it could be. Now then, let's go ahead and clear this out. Refresh. And by the way, this right here tells you if the browser that you're using, and currently I'm in the latest Chrome browser, is good for compressing content. And this is usually the case in most all current browsers. Older Firefox or that browser called Netscape, some of you might be aware of, some of those did not process compressed content. So there were issues then, but most of the browsers nowadays, that's not an issue at all. But this is good to know that if you get the green check mark, that your browser is good. So the first way is the easiest, and that's going to your cPanel control panel, coming on down here to optimize website. And usually, in mine anyway, usually you're going to find that in the software services panel close to the bottom. So if your cPanel control panel has this, then this is the best way to go, the easiest way to go. Click on that, compress all content, click on update settings, go back. Now let's come on back here and run that test again. Click on test. Ta-da, and we're good. Okay, so let's try another way. Refresh. Come on back here and let's disable this again. Because what if you do not have cPanel, or what if you do have cPanel but you don't have the optimized website option on your cPanel? Then you want to hunt down your htaccess. Actually, it's called the .htaccess file. And while I'm here, let's go ahead and go to the file manager. You can do the same thing through your FTP client. Now let's go ahead and right click and go to edit or code edit, either way. Actually, let's go to code edit because that puts the numbers on the lines here. And this pops up here because this is a WordPress site and I've used the permalinks feature. Let's go ahead and put my cursor right there. Let's take a look at some of the code options that we have to work with here. Now, a quick history. There are two different types of gzip for your Apache server. And this is something that's beyond your control. Usually this is only going to be done through your hosting account. So what I would suggest first and foremost is go ahead and contact your hosting account, whether it's HostGator, Liquid Web, whoever, and ask them if they have gzip enabled on the server, and if they do, which one. Is it mod_gzip or is it mod_deflate? And of course, if they don't have it enabled, either one, then go ahead and ask them to enable it and to let you know which one and what is the code they suggest you use in your .htaccess file. Let's go ahead and try this one here because I believe that on this particular hosting account, it is mod_deflate. And I've got these two codes here. Both of these will work for the mod_deflate, and then down here, I've got a code right here that will work for the mod_gzip. And you can kind of tell that this one is mod_gzip, and this one here has got the deflate in there all over the place, and this one here is mod_deflate. So these two will work if it's mod_deflate. So let's go ahead and just copy all this in here and just paste that at the end. Okay, that didn't work out right. Let's undo that. Control Z will undo that. And let's go ahead and format, take that off. And try this again. There we go. And let's save. I'm going to go ahead and leave this open because I'm going to change this here in a second. So let's come on back here and run that test again. Okay, so that one works. So that's two ways that you can add the gzip compression to your site. One way you have control over, and that's using the cPanel control panel and the optimized website option. Another way is you really don't have a whole lot of control over it if it's not enabled, but you need to contact your web hosting service to make sure that it is enabled and to find out which option they chose, mod deflate or mod gzip. Now another way, and this is only good if you've got a PHP-based site, that being WordPress in this case, or that you want to play around and actually try to just change your .html site into a .php site. That will usually work, but sometimes it can cause issues, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Go ahead and refresh our test page, and let's go ahead and come back here, close this out, because we're pretty well done here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that though. Close. Whoops, I didn't save it. Darn it. Let's try this again. Delete that. Save changes. So right now we are un-gzipped. Now we can close. And just to double check that we're no longer gzipped, run the test. No longer gzipped. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. Let's just refresh. And we're done here. Get out of here. And we're pretty well done here as well, so I'm going to go ahead and log out of here. So what I want to do at this point is log into the dashboard area of our WordPress site, and I've already done that. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, there's plenty of tutorials online. Basically, you just put in your URL /wp-admin. You'll probably be prompted to enter your username and password, and then just log in, and you'll end up somewhere like this. At this point, you want to come into the Appearance panel, go down to Editor, and you want to come over here to the far right and click on Header, so that will bring you to the header.php file. Because this code, this bottom one here, let me pull this up, this little code right here, you want to put this at the very top of every one of your PHP pages. And if it's a WordPress site, you can tackle that by putting it at the very top of your header.php file. That in turn will show up on every single one of your pages. Let's go ahead and copy this. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so now then you will, whenever you first open up the editor here, chances are you're going to be in the style.css. So you want to click on the header.php file here. That will open up the header.php page. And when I say at the very top, I mean at the very top. Put your cursor right there, hit your enter key a couple of times, well, just once anyway, and right above the very top code is where you paste that one little bitty line of code. Come on down here, click on Update File. Now really, you can't get much simpler than that. You don't have to go into the htaccess file. All you got to do is log into the dashboard area of your WordPress site, enter that one little code at the very top of the header.php file, save it, come on back to our test page, click on Test. Boom. Simple Simon. Now you have zero excuse on compressing your website content, and you can see right here the amount of savings that you're getting. Not only is this going to load faster in your visitor's browser, which is going to make them happy, but it's also going to save you bandwidth in the process. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. That's going to bring us to the end of this video on using gzip compression for your WordPress site. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day. A huge non-optimized image can really slow your web page load time, and that's not a good thing. This video will cover some tips, tricks, and techniques on optimizing the images on your WordPress site. Ideally, you should optimize your images before uploading them to your WordPress site, but if you have an existing site with a whole bunch of images, it's not too late to optimize those images as well. First, I want to cover how to optimize the images off-site before you actually add them to your media section. Then we're going to see just how easy it is to optimize your site's current images. Now, when optimizing images, there are two things to think about. the file size, and the image dimensions. The file size can usually be reduced by an image editing program like Photoshop or any number of other online free tools like, for example, Dynamic Drive. You can just do a Google search for image optimizers like I've done here, and you'll see at the time of this recording anyway, there's a tad bit over 3 million results. So there's no shortage of image optimizers, most of which are going to be free. Let me demonstrate the use of one of these, this guy right here, the Dynamic Drive Image Optimizer, by heading over to dynamicdrive.com. You can see they got a ton of tools here. The one we're going to be looking at is this guy right here, Image Optimizer. Let's click on that. And you have a limit of 2.86 megabytes in file size, which, by the way, is a huge image. The one I'm going to be demonstrating is about 1.5 meg, so it's still pretty fat. As a matter of fact, that's this guy right here. And this guy right here is about 3,000 pixels wide, and it's being scrunched down to about 600 pixels wide through the use of WordPress. So you're really taxing the use of WordPress and your visitor's browser if you do something like this, like a lot of people do. They'll upload a huge image into their WordPress media section, and then knowing that WordPress can scrunch it all down for them, they'll leave it at that. Well, it still has to load that full 3,000 pixel width image into your visitor's browser before it scrunches it down. So again, it's adding that extra load time, using a ton of bandwidth. That's just a total waste. So let's go ahead and use this free tool to knock the file size down. We'll tackle the dimensions here in just a second. But you can either use the URL of the image or just select it from your computer, and that's what I'm going to do here. And that's the one that's on my post, but this is the one I'm going to go ahead and scrunch down, because this one's 1.5 meg. And this one here, as I hover over it, you'll see it's about 2.69 megabytes, and that's pushing it as far as the limit that Dynamic Drive will take. So just to be on the safe side, we'll take this guy here. Just select, open, and right here, I want to leave it as the same input type, but I want to show all results. Click on Optimize, and depending upon the size of the image will depend on how long it takes to actually finish this, but through the magic of video editing, this won't take very long at all. And here we go. And as it's shown here, the original, that's this guy right at the top, is 1.4 megabytes. Yeah, let's round up, 1.5 megabytes. And if we come on down to the next image that it's scrunched down by 25%, you really can't tell much of the difference between the two, except this one here, your browser is going to be pretty happy because it's been reduced by 25%. Let's go ahead and scroll on down even further. And frankly, this looks pretty crisp. And this one is 307 kilobytes, a reduction of 79%. Your browser is going to be ecstatic. And frankly, this is still pretty darn detailed. So depending upon the actual end quality you're looking for in your posted images, like if you're not a photography blog, then something like this, or even, scrolling on down further, 89%. Yeah, that's getting a little pixelated, so that's a little bit too much for my taste. But this one here might do just fine, and that is 244K, a reduction of 84%. So anyway, you can see that with this free online tool, you've got a host of different ranges that you can work with that will reduce your file size immensely. And not only are you reducing the load time, but also you're saving a ton of bandwidth, which in some cases can equate to a savings of money at the end of each month. Okay, so that's the file size. As far as the actual image dimensions, it really should not be left up to WordPress to do the reduction for you if you can do it off-site, and you can. For example, right here, depending upon your theme, the maximum width of your content area may be somewhere between 600 pixels, which is about the case with this one, to maybe 900, even 1,000 pixels in width if you're not using a sidebar. So having an image 3,000 pixels wide is just a waste, because again, the entire image, the entire original image, has to be loaded into your visitor's browser before WordPress can go to work at reducing it to the size that will fit into the content area of that particular theme. So reduce the size before you actually upload it. That's the offsite stuff. Now, if you've already got a whole bunch of these images on your site and you don't want to go to the trouble of logging on to an FTP client, downloading all these images, doing the file reduction and the dimension reduction offsite, and then re-uploading them, overwriting those files that are on your server already, which would be the case. And if you only have a few images, then that would be an ideal situation. But if that's something that's just not doable for you because you just have so many images, then what you can do is try a plugin that will do a lot of that work for you. Two of them that I'm going to suggest. One of them is WP Smushit. Got to be careful how I pronounce that. And another one is Insanity. That's I-M-Sanity, not Insanity. Both of these, once installed and activated on your WordPress site, will do a bulk reduction of file size and dimensions, which will take a lot of that stress off of your visitor's browser when trying to load that huge image that you already have on your site. But where these might only reduce the overall size, both file and dimensions, by maybe 6 or 7 or maybe even 8%. Remember, with the dynamic drive, these guys are doing it upwards of 79 to 85%. So again, ideally, the best way is the offsite and then upload to your site. But if that's just not an option for you, then let's head on over to plugins. I'll demonstrate the use of this guy right here, WP Smushit. Now, they both do the same thing as far as bulk reduction, but with WP Smushit, it does have a limit of 1 megabyte. So if you have a lot of images that are in excess of 1 megabyte, then you might want to try Insanity. Let's go ahead and install this guy right here by going to the dashboard of our WordPress site, come up to Plugins, go to Add New, type in here WP Smushit, click on Search Plugins, check out the details if you want to, or just click on Install Now. Click on OK, click on Activate, and here it is right here. Now you come on up here to the Media link, and right here you've got Bulk Smushit, or you can just come into the library if you want to do just 1 or 2 images by activating that plugin. Over here on the far right of each one of your images, you have a new option called Smushit. And if there's no savings, then it'll tell you right here. Or if you want to just try to smush it even further, then you have that option. And you can see here that these two are in excess of the limitation that Smushit has, so you're not able to use that. And by the way, WP Smushit is part of the Yahoo developer tool Smushit. So if you are familiar with using the Yahoo tool Smushit, then you're kind of familiar with how this works. Same process. But let's head on back over here to Bulk Smushit. Just click on that. Just read this stuff here. And by the way, it's a good idea before you do any of this stuff, whether you're using WP Smushit or Insanity, that before you run the images through that plugin, you want to do a full backup of both your files and your database. That way, in case you're not happy with the end result after you do the reduction in file size and dimensions, then you can just nix the whole thing, reinstall things from your backup, and you're back to where you were before you installed the plugin. Let's go ahead and run all images through WP Smushit right now. Let's click that. And of course, depending upon how many images you have, will depend on how long this takes. And you can see here the reduction size in percentage-wise is nothing compared to that of the dynamic drive option, but still, every little bit helps. And that's an example of how you can do an on-site reduction versus the off-site reduction. But from this point on, you should always try to do the off-site reduction first before you upload the images to your site. That's going to bring us to the end of this video on optimizing images for your WordPress site. Thanks for watching, and you have a great day.